A special broadcast for you tonight. What's behind the violence is the theme of our special broadcast after the violence and looting of the last few days. We go live now to Chriselda Lewis, who's standing by at Gandhi Square in Johannesburg.
Well, a very good evening to you, Stephen, as we continue with this special broadcast here on the SABC News channel. As the body count rises, the official figure that was given by the Police Minister, Gauteng, today is that 12 people have so far been killed, but that number could be revised, of course, pending investigations, and more than 630 people have been arrested since the start of the violence. Of course, now, this has had a ripple effect where we've seen retaliatory attacks in other parts of the continent as a result of the attacks on foreign nationals here in South Africa. So tonight we bring you to the doorstep of where this violence has been taking place over the past couple of weeks here in the Johannesburg CBD. And just to give you a sense there, Stephen, of what we noticed just a couple of hours ago when we arrived here was that foreign nationals, in fact all the shops here in the Johannesburg CBD, seem to be closing much more earlier now over fears, of course, that once the sun goes down there could be a resurgence in violence. Of course, we saw a resurgence of that violence in some parts of Johannesburg yesterday, in Malvern, for example, where some shops were looted there. Lots of condemnation coming from the president, coming from various quarters of government to the violence that seems to be continuing. So tonight we will speak to two individuals and also some other individuals as well to get a sense of why the violence itself is continuing, exactly how many foreign nationals are displaced now, and even though there'd been reassurance that was given by the Izinduna that the violence would not continue, there seems to be those pockets of violence that continue here in Johannesburg. Let me start, of course, with the chairperson of the Izinduna in the Gauteng province. Let me start with you, Ntate Simpiwe. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Dr. Mhlongo. Dr. Mhlongo, you had given reassurance just a couple of hours ago that the violence would stop, but it is continuing. What is the issue?
I cannot guarantee that there will be peace forever, but we have got actually we think that because we have spoken a lot about this, we think that it's going to become down very soon.
But that hasn't happened. I recall speaking to you at the Jeppe police station. That's where you had met with the police minister, Gauteng, and you gave assurance. I asked you that question about whether you thought the talks that were going on would bring an end to the violence, and you said you believed so. There seems to be some kind of miscommunication between yourselves and the hostel residents themselves. Is that the case?
Actually, we cannot guarantee peace, but at the moment, what we see, what we hear from the people is that they are demanding the immediate attention from the government so that they can raise their concerns and complaints.
A meeting was scheduled to be held in Mbizo, a government Mbizo, on Sunday, which was just yesterday. That was postponed, and according to our understanding, the postponement was also given your blessing. But we saw the former IFP leader, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, address the hostel residents yesterday. Was that per your invitation, or were you informed that he would come?
We were informed that he's coming. He is coming actually as himself and also as a prominent figure in the country. So he is a highly esteemed leader. So he just came to speak to the people because he has got ability to calm down situations like this.
But the situation did not calm down. What we actually saw moments later, hours later, were some of the shops in Malvern being destroyed there. And as a result of people not wanting to listen, they were demanding government.
Yes, after hours, yes, there was actually chaos, looting whatsoever after hours. But the meeting went on well, although there were some people who were unruly, who were demanding government at the same time.
Would you say you're failing to put a lid on the violence? Because ultimately, those hostel dwellers are the ones that listen to you as Izinduna.
Oh, the word dwellers come again. I think you forgot. Actually, we are not failing. we are trying our best to let the people stop this, especially the focus to be on hostels. It's not only in hostels, Malvern, other places as well. So there are many criminals around here because criminals have taken advantage of this situation.
Are you blaming it now solely on criminals? Because the discontent that we saw yesterday had come from the hostel residents who had been gathered at that particular location where the former IFP leader was.
Yes, but I can say that the crime also is taking place. That is dominating actually because the lootings, burnings and whatsoever is part of crime.
I'll come back to you just very shortly. Let's just get a sense now of exactly how many people have been displaced. We might not have the full figures just as yet, but we'll get a sense from the Africa Diaspora Forum. Dr. Vusi Sibanda joins us this evening. Thank you very much for joining us here in the Johannesburg CBD dock. Let's get an official figure on exactly how many foreign nationals have been displaced. My colleague Makeketla Mutlabe is out in Katlehong. He has some figures there, but what do you have at your disposal as those being on the ground currently?
Well, look, the people that are in the shelter, for example, at we know that we've got 588 adults and 277 children. That is only people that are at the shelter. We also know that there are people that are living, next to the mountain in Albertine that have not been able to come down, to get to stay at the shelter, because when people fled, that particular area, they did not all, manage to get, assistance. And we know that as well. Even last night, there were people that were being evacuated in Julis. I actually called General Marshall, in the middle of the night, and they helped with evacuating quite a few, I think individuals, from areas where they felt that, they were going to be banned. So the numbers that we have right now on a rough, scale, we're looking at in excess of 2,000 to 3,000 people that have been displaced.
You have in part blamed government's demeanor. You've termed it as demeanor to the spread of this violence, including the retaliatory attacks that we've seen on other parts of the African continent. Talk to me a bit about this demeanor that you're unhappy about.
Look, I think just as you had, the chief of the Indunas, Ubaba Mhlongo, was saying that, look, people were unhappy yesterday because government did not show. The failure of government, to come to the party, for example, to meet people, these are people that elected the government, and when they have a problem, they expect to speak to the government. If the government doesn't make a show, then that becomes a problem, and people realize that this government doesn't care. And the attacks that we're seeing are more or less of what we'd call exit wounds, because people are bottling, they've bottled up a lot of things that they want, to vent out. And, from the onset, we had DECO, scheduling a meeting. I think it was last week, Friday, the meeting which was ultimately cancelled. And it is my thinking that, the reason why we saw attacks taking place in Nigeria, we saw, for example, what happened in Zambia, in DRC and Mozambique, it was mainly because, people felt that, the government of South Africa is not really committed, to getting to intervene and stop, these attacks, because the failure of government to come out very strongly against this, governments will always be very diplomatic. That's one thing that we know. Governments in Africa in particular, they like the sovereignty principle to such an extent that even if you do something wrong, they will not say anything about it. So it is our view that the reason why, these attacks took place in some of these countries, and I think that the governments also did fold their hands and said, oh, well, look, the South African government is not doing anything. So why is it, called upon us to actually go out and stop our people from doing the attacks? And that is the demeanor that we're talking about, that the body language, of the South African government has been sending negative signals, to other countries in the continent. And as a result, that is why we can see that, these attacks, are continuing even, across the continent.
You've also called, or you're looking at calls for compensation for some of the business people who have been affected by this. Talk to us a bit about this, because this will also likely open up a floodgate of demands and calls for compensation. Talk to us about how you believe this could be structured.
Well, look, I think we quite understand that the courts might not, easily, for example, like you've rightfully said, that, look at these kind of, claims, because it would open, a fury of, such claims. But if we look at what is happening in the Julius area, we've got viable business, not just small businesses, multi-million, businesses. We've seen, for example, one gentleman that came in who said, the cheapest vehicle out of a fleet of 50 vehicles that he had, cost 135,000. So we're talking about businesses that employ 10, 15, 20 people, and some of them had, financing from the banks and all that. So we're hoping that, there can be a sitting down, starting from, with the South African government, if it means even the African Development Bank gets involved, but it would really make a lot of sense, because as we are talking right now, people are complaining about unemployment and the businesses that have been destroyed in Julius. It means more unemployment is going to come in, and yet we have got capable business people that have been running, successful business people that have been employing, more than 10, 15 people. Last night I spoke to a lady from Eastern Cape who actually said, you know what, I have taken my children to a place of safety, but I'm going to come here because I've worked in this company for the last 20 years. If this company is going down, I'm going to go down with it. And I asked that, is that your company? She says, no, it's not my company, but you know what, this is where the bread, the butter, everything that, I have to, feed my children comes from. And that's why I've got this attachment. So what we are saying, therefore, is that there needs to be a strategy and a means of how to rebuild the economy, because if this continues, you can imagine if Julius, for example, in Malvern becomes a ghost town, that where are all those people going to go? I mean, the means of livelihood, that have been established in that area are all going to be destroyed. So we need to find a means of compensating those people. It doesn't necessarily have to come from South Africa alone, but there needs to be a means.
And I think just a couple of hours ago, I did see a tweet from the official feed of the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, who said that he's received a feedback, from the special envoy that he had sent to South Africa to gather more information about exactly what was going on. Calls again for calm. I will just bring in a few gentlemen at the moment. I think let me start with you, sir, before I come to you, Babu Mhlongo. Sir, let me just get your name, if you could come just a bit closer this way. Let me get your name. Where are you from?
I'm Amir Sheikh. I'm the spokesperson for the African Diaspora Forum.
All right. We'll come through to you in just a few moments. Let's start with this gentleman here, because we have spoken to come through this way, sir. Let's just get your sense, sir, about, what we're witnessing in South Africa over the past couple of weeks.
Okay, my name is Teenage Musakumbe. I'm from African Civil Revolutionary Movement. I'm a South African, and we've been active from day one this situation started, and then we've been of aid. We went to their homes where those people are kept in the halls and so on, and we've accounted mostly injuries that we testified, the bombing of the mosques, and the 2 mosques in Katlehong, Vosloorus, and the other one here in Nugget Street. And then we've seen, at least in Katlehong, that the police tried to secure the community that is there in the 2 halls that are based there, and we did what, as an organization, we went to deliver food and groceries and some toiletries for the people, and we gave them guarantee that we'll try to communicate with the communities that is very confused in the townships, that they don't even know what they are fighting for, and we actually had to mobilize in the communities to protect those other migrants that are in their communities. So also last night we've been in Julius the whole night. We've been observing the situation, and we discovered many people are very angry and they are very beefed in terms of the way government ignored them to their calls, and they were not happy when the King Buthelezi was addressing them, because they felt government undermined them after the Minister of Police Begitele promised that he will actually make sure that they address the matter and resolve the issues. So this has led also to criminals hijacking the platform, because most of the people, they felt like, look, we waited and we wasted our time. That's when they took a walk into the CBD, took advantage of the situation. So with us as ACRM, we still request and advice to the South Africans in the township, because they don't even know the core of this. They should not just partake, because it's all criminal elements, and at the end of the day, they don't even have issues as South Africans against these people. So we suggest government to reinforce itself and get down to the people and take accountability.
All right, Babu Mhlongo, I want to bring you back in there. If you could just come towards us. It's very disconcerting to hear exactly how many people have been displaced by the ongoing violence. We're talking about figures, according to the Africa Diaspora Forum now, running into the thousands, close to 3,000. I mean, why would you agree to have the Imbizo postponed, yet the violence itself is continuing to simmer?
Begitele has got the power to continue with Imbizo or to stop it. He said he was also respecting the king, because there was Mkoso Mhlanga taking place in KZN. Also, as well, actually, the killing that is continuing, we condemn that as well. But the people are out of control at the moment because of the government. They demand the government to see the government. That's why also they did not listen to Shenge because of these demands. They want Pele, they want the government, they want all departments.
But when is that going to happen? Because, I mean, you speak on behalf of some of those who are accused of being part of this violence. What is the way forward? I mean, we saw the resurgence of violence, yet there is no guarantee. You cannot even give me a guarantee that there won't be violence in the next couple of hours.
What we need now is the government to approach these people as soon as possible. It will stop.
But when is as soon as possible? You agreed to have a postponement to an imbizo that was meant to address individuals who are very aggrieved by what they say is the situation in the country that's turning out of control.
The meeting was initiated by the Minister of Police. So even now, we shall wait for him until he organizes a new meeting. According to him, he phoned me today saying that he's busy arranging a new meeting soon.
But the hostel residents themselves, I mean, what is their feeling about all of this? I mean, they've put their grievances on the table. And I know that yesterday the government had been given 24 hours to respond to these demands. I mean, we're fast approaching that 24 hours, soon to be over that. And you can't give me any guarantees that there won't be any violence.
Actually, the ultimatum that was given by the people, it was people from the floor, because there was a time where we gave them chance to speak. So now there is no actually legal ultimatum about that, because it was people from the floor. On our side.
But those people from the floor, Babu Mhlongo, are people who are living at the hostels. They are hostel residents. They were part of that meeting, and they seemed very aggrieved.
Their concerns and complaints were not received, because Shenge only came to let them stop the violence. Actually, nothing is with the government at the moment until they come. The government did not address them at the moment.
All right. We're just about to wrap up here. Let me bring you in, Dr. Sibanda, very quickly. Just tell me, what do you think government needs to do immediately to ensure that there is a cessation of violence and no further loss of life?
Well, we think the government needs, for example, to meet, to come down. There is a group of people, for example, like the hostel, our residents that are so aggrieved. And we know that these are the same people that came into town and that were dispersed by the police, using, the rubber bullets and stun grenades. The government needs to come down and speak to these people, speak to the leadership of the people and the people together, and listen, give them a hearing as to what it is that concerns them, and try and find solutions and, make undertakings on how to deal with the issues, going forward, which means that basically all the communities, including the migrant communities that are being, accused of crime and what, we need to be sitting down with government to map a way forward to say, okay, in terms of crime, how do we work forward, dealing with crime and the concerns, that the people are bringing forward? Because some of these issues involve, corruption that is taking place in government offices. It includes, sloppiness, for example, and bribery. So what we need to do basically is we need to see the government coming and sitting down with all the relevant stakeholders and say, and we don't need this tomorrow, we need this now. Because if it does not happen now, it means, the killings will continue. It might actually happen that right now, maybe they are actually gearing to start again in Julius and Malvern. And that means, again, Africa as a whole is also burning.
Right. Concerns of further violence, Stephen, in Johannesburg, as we've seen over the past couple of days. But I can tell you from where we're standing at the moment, it's extremely quiet. But you can almost get a sense from the people that you speak to that we're not completely out of the woods yet. There are concerns that the violence itself could start up again. And whether government is going to come and address hostile residents and the general population itself in the next couple of hours is certainly something that needs to be seen. But certainly a solution to this crisis needs to be found immediately. Many of those who are in negotiations with government to try and find a solution to this problem at the moment say government needs to find a solution right away. Let's take a short break here on The Full View. Much more coming back after the break.